Hi there, and welcome to another episode of BigLipz podcast. My name is Sam Macaulay Blair, and as ever, I am joined by the lovely Catherine Maurice. We are two former and current film students, as we've mentioned previously, and every week we sort of tackle a different theme with these podcasts relating to the wide universe of movies. So this week, we've decided to delve into the world of movie marketing. Obviously movies, especially in this day and age, are a very extensive promotional campaign. Like, a lot of movies start being trailed years before they sort of are released. Some movies begin like being trailed before they've even begun production or pre-production, which is kind of insane. I think Alien 3 is probably a famous example of a film that was sort of bent into shape so that they could reach a deadline for a trailer that they released before like any work had really been done in the film. So obviously this installment is very subjective. Both Catherine and I will just be speaking from our own experiences and with things that have really resonated with us that we found interesting. That's kind of the appeal of this subject. Everyone kind of has their own experiences, and I suspect a lot of them kind of relate to growing up when movies are at their most magical. So the structure we've adopted for this one is kind of quite similar to the structure we had for our first episode, where we looked at endings. So to begin with, we are going to look at our favourite examples of marketing, like what we've thought are like sort of the best examples of marketing, the ones that have really resonated with us the most. So I will now hand over to Catherine and let her do some talking.
Perfect, thank you. I think when we were kind of speaking about this plan and things, the very first one that jumped to my mind was the Blair Witch Project, which is actually really funny because I've not even seen the movie.
No, neither have I.
But I know all about like the marketing for it, because I think that's one of those cases where the marketing was better than the movie, which is just difficult to do.
Yeah.
I think it's funny as well because obviously it kind of popularised the found footage horror movie kind of a subgenre, if you will. And I think they kind of set the bar for not only like horror film marketing, but like viral film marketing in general, because it was like late 90s, so it was very like new to its time.
They were sort of right on the edge of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was funny because they from the very beginning marketed it as a documentary, so like they properly took found footage and made it like real. So the way that they did that, basically some of the ways they had created this website, and it was all about the legend of the Blair Witch. So that, because obviously the movie's about these young filmmakers that go to find the Blair Witch, and then they disappear, kind of thing. And then like 10 years later or whatever it is, they find this footage, and it's as if that's the footage that's been released to the public. So the website kind of made it seem like the legend of the Blair Witch had been a thing long before the movie had come out, basically.
Yeah.
Another thing they did that I thought was really weird was that they made the actors look like real people, like real film students. So they made up like missing posters, put the actors on it, and then put them up on like college campuses. Yeah.
That's insane.
That's so weird. Imagine like, because if you think about it, you go to uni sometimes, like especially in America, you could go to uni in a couple of different states from like your hometown, and then imagine seeing a picture and be like, I'm sure I went to school with that person. And that wasn't the name of school.
That's a very good point. Like, if you recognise them, or if you like briefly worked with them, or you just had like some sort of like encounter in your life, you'd be like, hang on a sec.
That would be spoiled then, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, true.
I think it was funny as well because I was kind of reading up on it, and someone had made the point that that's something that couldn't really be done now, because people are such like internet sleuths, and they're always like, everything's a conspiracy theory, and everything, there's always people trying to prove it, and there's always people trying to disprove it. So if that happened now, you would find the actors within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, look, they're still alive.
Yeah. Well, there was a sort of attempt at like the same sort of thing that I'd completely forgotten about until you started talking about this. Have you ever heard of the movie? I think it's called The Fourth Kind, with Mila Jovovich.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
I think it came out in like 2009, and it was a sort of horror, same sort of idea with found footage, I'm sure. And it was like a horror about like alien abductions. And I just remember being in cinemas and seeing a trailer for it, and they made it seem as if like, obviously like she is an actress, but I'm pretty sure they made it seem as if she was. It was like a retelling of something that had happened, like a true story, and they were just like,
right, because you get that sometimes like at the start of horror movies, like based on a true story, and then you look into it
yeah,
and it's not even true. Like
yeah,
Fargo did it.
yeah, exactly. Which is kind of part of the brilliance of Fargo, but. Yeah, like I think they set up like fake phone numbers and like fake websites for the fourth kind, and I wasn't even aware about this because I saw it like years after it came out. Remember like next to nothing about it, so it wasn't like that special a film either. But I remember reading a review for it and it mentioning the fact that they had really tried to do like the same thing as Blair Witch, where they had like set up websites and like phone numbers and stuff, and I think they'd even set up like biographies and stuff about like the person and the people involved. Like people just kind of got to the bottom of it really quickly because it's really easy to do that
definitely now. Especially like even think of like documentaries like the one on Netflix, the cat one, where the whole point of that documentary was that they had discovered this killer kind of thing just via the internet, so it would just never work now because people are so almost like naturally mistrustful about everything.
Yeah, exactly. We're all super like skeptical of anything we see and hear online. If a movie's telling you there's something like a bit like creepy and supernatural, and the movie's trying to tell you that it's real, then everyone's immediately going like, "Hang on," and you kind of want to like poke that with a stick.
Yeah, I think as well that's maybe partly because of Blair Witch. So because people were maybe so fooled by it, like, oh yeah, it was maybe like one of those things, you know, when people reiterate a story so much that some people are like, oh yeah, actually I remember that happening, but it didn't happen at all.
Like the Mandela effect.
Like Mandela effect, yeah. So it's maybe been like that, and now people are just so like subconsciously raging that they were fooled.
Yeah, fool me once, basically.
Exactly, so that we're not going to be fooled again. It was funny as well, I read that they'd managed to like, the filmmakers had like manipulated IMDb to show that when you clicked on that actor's name, it came up saying that they were missing and presumed dead.
That's insane.
So they did all the work for it, in fairness to them.
A for effort. That's absolutely brilliant. Like that genuinely must have been, if you'd seen that movie at the time and you were actually really, because there'll obviously be loads of people that saw the movie without having any real concept of like the marketing around it. But if you genuinely had like seen wanted posters and looked up like the IMDb and like kind of done like enough research that you bought into it, that must have been so scary.
It would have been, yeah, that's so true. And if you had just even Googled like the Blair Witch and it comes up with this whole legit looking website, that'd be really creepy.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw as well when they released the trailer, they'd also made this little mini documentary about, not even about the students that had gone missing, about the Blair Witch. So it just kind of added into it even more. Like if you were looking into it, you'd be like, there's a website, there's a documentary about it.
Yeah, like definite like props to them for for going to those lengths just to sell a movie for a really low budget movie as well.
Yeah, it was like super low budget.
But like,
I mean, I've not seen it, but from what I've heard, it's not people's favourite movie. So props to them for their marketing being better than their movie.
Yeah, I think like any time I've sort of seen it mentioned and people that have seen it talked about it, I think I remember my mum talking about it actually years ago. So I think she went to see it when it first came out, and like it's one of those things where people are like, it was really, really scary at the time when people thought it was kind of real. But when you take that away, when you're aware of the fact that it's a movie, and now we're like found footage is, again, I think I reckon when it was original and it was like the only thing really doing found footage horror, it probably had that going for it as well. But now we've already kind of passed that like fad. There's so much found footage horror that I can't imagine watching the Blair Witch and being like, oh my god, that film changed me as a person.
Yeah, whoa, that was scary.
Not going to be sleeping after that.
Exactly. That's funny. I think the only other thing that came to mind, and it was just a tiny little snippet, was the fact that they named the second Mamma Mia movie, it was called Mamma Mia 2, Here We Go Again. That was just absolute genius.
Yeah, that I very much agree with that actually. Like, they had an opportunity and they took it.
Yeah, and they just didn't look back, and it was all for the better. Absolute
brilliance. I love your choices. Yeah, very good picks. Very interesting picks. I've gone a very different direction with mine. My like personal like sort of favourite example of marketing, and this will come as like no surprise whatsoever, because I've already talked about this being my favourite film, was Inception.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be Christopher Nolan.
I couldn't not mention it because like honestly it was like I genuinely remember watching the trailers for it when it came out, and I sort of rewatched the trailers today just to kind of like because I recently rewatched the film and I was like I'm curious like what it's like seeing the trailers now and if I can kind of remember my mindset of watching them. But I remember just watching them, and it does such a good job of like it does kind of try to give you an idea of what the film's about, but it really doesn't tell you very much. And given that like conceptually it's a very unique film, I do remember watching the trailers and just being like, I don't know what is going on, what this film is about at all, but I am like super on board with it. And like visually it looked really good, and of course like there's that classic foghorn effect.
That score, it's Hans Zimmer, isn't it?
Is Hans Zimmer that did the score for the movie, but it's Zach Chemisi, I think, that did the score for the trailer.
They did for the trailer.
Yeah, which he probably doesn't get nearly enough credit for, because like that score literally like that became like the score for movie trailers for like absolutely years. There's probably still movie trailers that come out today that have like the foghorn effect. And it's again like part of the success of that film is like it literally had like a marketing campaign that changed other marketing campaigns, which I've always kind of got to respect. Otherwise, another one I kind of want to shout out to is I think the Harry Potter franchise generally had like, and again this is like a completely personal thing, but I think they had some really really great movie trailers in their run. I remember I think it was the fourth Harry Potter film had an absolutely brilliant trailer where they showed like a clip of like Daniel Radcliffe from the first film, then the second, then the third, and then the fourth.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that was.
And
nice.
They kind of went through like all the main characters and did that, and it was like a really cool thing because obviously part of like the magic of that franchise was just actually seeing these actors grow up before you. And I just remember I think it was the fourth one again. I remember going to see Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit as a child, and the trailer for that film came on just before it. And this was obviously at a point like sort of, I mean the internet was around, but I was a kid and wasn't really using it. So when like a trailer, when I was at the cinema and a trailer came on, it would be my first experience of seeing it. And I just remember that being like a really really exciting thing. Like not.
I think I think the Harry Potter one's a really good choice because, like you were saying, you didn't really. Like nowadays you can just hear of a movie and then just Google or go on YouTube and find the trailer, but like the Harry Potter ones especially were something that you knew were coming out periodically. So when you saw the trailer in the cinema, it was such a nice surprise. Yeah,
exactly. And I remember genuinely like, going to movies when it would come like coming up to the time, like a few months before like a Harry Potter film would be coming out, and I remember going to the cinema and genuinely thinking like I really hope there's a trailer for the new Harry Potter film. Like I really want to like see what it's like. I remember even like trailers coming on TV and like immediately, usually use ad breaks and stuff to like go to the bathroom or get food, but I remember like sitting there just watching the trailers because again like you couldn't really look them up, you couldn't really rewind it. It was like if you missed it, you missed it.
So that's so true. The Harry Potter ones do that nice thing as well at the beginning where the Warner Brothers logo changes. As the movies, like it gets progressively darker as the movies go on, which is really cool.
Yeah, they even changed the colour of the font from like lovely shiny gold to like rusted sort of grey. But they did it really really cool. Like I think the fact that like so many, it must have been a nightmare behind the scenes with the fact that like there was a point when like I think it was from like the second film to like the fifth one, every film had a different director. Which must have been a nightmare if you were like working on those films as like a producer or something and you just had like a director come on then immediately like depart. But I think as a fan it did such a good job of like all those movies had their own kind of visual style, which was a really nice thing. And I think that like as much as I love like all the films and I think they all like do a really good job, I do think that like there was something really cool about when you would go see a Harry Potter film and you wouldn't even really know what the visual language of the film was going to be. And it kind of lost that in the last few because they retained the same director who then has carried over to Fantastic Beasts. He must have now done like I wonder how many he's done 5, 6, 7, 8 and 2 Fantastic Beasts film. So he's done
2 Fantastic Beasts.
So he's almost done as many films as there are books, which is insane. Very keen on the franchise, but it is something that I think is kind of as like a kind of problem with the franchise now is that visually it's got quite stale because it's no longer got that magic of like someone new coming on and going, okay, well, this is what I want to do with the subject matter. And like those trailers were a really cool like first glimpse of what someone new like Alfonso Cuarón or I think Mike Yates did the fourth one, like what they were bringing to it. But yeah, those were basically my top two picks. The two that sort of stood out to me for different reasons at different points. So next up, now that we've done best, we're going to jump to worst examples of marketing. Once again, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. So when I was thinking about this one, my choice was the movie Arrival.
Oh, really?
Basically because, the reason I chose this is because I watched the movie recently. I think it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about it. The only reason that it was kind of on my radar, that I had kind of heard of it, was because I've got like a slight obsession with Amy Adams, if I'm honest.
Very fair.
So I was aware that she had done this movie about aliens or whatever, but genuinely that was it. I don't remember seeing a trailer. I don't remember. The only thing that made me watch it is like word of mouth, other people saying, "Oh, actually, that movie's really good."
I think.
And
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think back to when the movie was coming out, because I remember going to see it at the cinema, but I also can't think of like what any of the trailers were like, and I don't know if it was also like a word of mouth thing.
Yeah, because I watched the trailer. I watched the movie first, actually, and then I watched the trailer.
Okay.
And I thought it was very like, it kind of reminded me of the movie Alien, where the trailer was very like, there was a lot of like quick cuts. It was really loud. There was loads of like alarm sounds, like, you know, the bit in Alien when she's like running through all the vents and all the alarms are going off. And it was very reminiscent of that, which I thought was weird because the movie's not like that at all.
Yeah, totally. It's a very like, different place.
Yeah, it's quite like slow paced, and it's quite. I thought the best part about it was like the cinematography.
Yeah.
So they more focused on that. Yeah, than for example, Alien. Like, it was very much there's a killer alien on the loose, whereas this movie was a bit more. It was a bit more like a personal story.
Yeah.
It was all about like Amy Adams and what she was going through and stuff like that, as opposed to. But the way that they marketed it was it's an alien movie, so
yeah, that's it's a really sort of strange approach, because it's like one of the most like grounded sort of sci-fi films I've seen, and it's very much using like it does use aliens to sort of tell like a human story and hold a lens up to humanity, which I mean a lot of alien stories do, but in such a way that it's not like action heavy at all. It is like super dialogue heavy.
Definitely, but if you watch the trailer, it was very like, it was just weird. It wasn't a very good trailer. Like, if I'd watched the trailer, I'd be like, nah. And then like it's on Netflix as well, and you know how it shows the little snippet. Yeah. Like if you leave the cursor or whatever on it, and that was literally, they picked like the most boring 2-minute segment of the film to show you.
What 2 minutes did they pick?
No joke. They were just walking through this camp, just like Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner and Forrest Whitaker. They were just walking through this camp. Nothing exciting was happening. There was just army guys around, and that was it. It just went blank.
Yeah, whoever's in charge of selling this movie doesn't want it to be sold.
Yeah. I also as well thought it was really funny when I had looked into it a bit more. I saw that have you seen it yet?
I've seen it, yeah.
You know the little like craft things, like the spaceships basically?
Yeah.
And how they're just hovering in different locations. So they had done, for movie posters, they had released loads of different posters of like iconic landscapes with the craft in it.
Oh, really?
They did one, and it was Hong Kong, but they had there was like a TV tower that was actually, like, in reality it's actually in Shanghai. So basically they've just been like, there's Hong Kong, but that looks slightly like Hong Kong, so we'll just fire that in there and no one will notice.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's bad.
I think that's a shame as well, because obviously that wasn't like, it would have been outsourced, like it wasn't but surely someone on the film, some producer somewhere should have been seeing that and been like, have we fact checked? Is everything correct in this picture?
Yeah. If we're saying a city's a city, is it definitely that city?
Yeah. I thought it was funny as well, because because the movie's quite like intelligent, and that it's the story that it's telling is like that she's trying to understand their language and create a language so that she can speak to them and they can speak to her. And then they're like, oh, we'll just put this in here because it looks Asian. You know what I mean?
Oh god, yeah, so much effort and so much like thought and care put like behind the scenes. Although there was one story that I know from like the making of the movie. It's been like I've seen it the one time when it was sort of in cinemas, so my memory of it isn't like super sharp. But I do remember like sort of being blown away by it and loving it. But I watched this like interview on YouTube with the writer of the movie, and he talked about I think he talked about the fact that like Denis Villeneuve, who directed it, he really appreciated the fact that he was so involved. Like usually, I think he said that when you write a sort of script and it gets like option to get sold, it's kind of just out of your hands, and like a director might pick it up, but they're very interested in doing like their own thing. Like they might bring other writers on board, or they might just like change things up themselves. But he said he really appreciated the fact that like Denis was really interested in sort of like talking to him as much as possible and like really like coming to grips with the story and understanding it, and like the two of them really like worked together on like making the movie and sort of realizing it. But there was one bit where it's like sort of the culmination of the film, and she speaks to, is it like a diplomat or someone? It's someone, and they're basically like speaking. It's like it basically all sort of hangs on a Chinese phrase, and obviously like they were standing on set ready to film it, and the writer was like elsewhere, and he basically got a phone call, and it was the director, and he picks it up, and the director's like, what's the phrase that like that's said? And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, what's the phrase? Like, you've just written in the script, they say a phrase, like what is it? We need to know. We've got like a translator standing here ready to translate it to the actors. And he said the writer like completely freaked out, and he was just like he hadn't thought about it at all. So he then had to like in an absolute rush sit down and like work out. And he said he was like really happy with what he came up with. Like it was a really sort of nice sort of poetic like phrase. But yeah, it was just like he was just like so completely thrown by it. And I love that like he obviously put so much like time and thought and care into like writing it, but that was just like one area which he'd kind of like fogged it and at like the worst
That's
possible
so funny,
time.
yeah, because the whole movie's so intelligent in that there's this whole language and she's figuring it out, and then the writers be like, just put wee
Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
Just fudge it. Like you can say anything, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
How many people speak Chinese?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I like us. So yeah, as for all of the movies, obviously very well made. Yeah, it does sound like there was a few fumbles sort of behind the scenes and around it. But yeah, no, it's a good pick, and I like the fact that you picked like a genuinely good film. That was just like really sort of.
I just like because the marketing thing just kind of annoyed me more than anything else, because it was definitely, had people not said, "Oh, you should watch this movie," I just would never have watched it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Like it's something that I've not really seen much fuss about since it came out. I remember like there was a bit of like a buzz around it when it came out, but since then it's one of those films that I almost forget that has come out and I've seen, but whenever it's mentioned I'm like, oh yeah, like I really like that film.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I guess it kind of makes sense with like there being like a mishandled marketing campaign. Yeah, I've gone again a very different direction with mine. And I'm really betraying like my geekiness with these. I've basically just gone for like pretty much the whole Terminator franchise for pure marketing.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because like since I think it's literally since Terminator 2, so Terminator 2 onwards, like every single Terminator film has for some reason spoiled like a major twist in the trailers. And it's really strange. Like it's just such a bizarre way to trail the films, because like you can even tell when you're watching. Sometimes it's more obvious than others, but it's just really strange when like I remember going to see like I like saw Terminator 2 on DVD thankfully and hadn't seen any trailers for it, so I watched that movie as fresh as possible and it's absolutely outstanding. But the whole angle of like, have you seen Terminator 2?
I actually am embarrassed to admit this, but I haven't seen any of the Terminator movies. Okay,
well I won't spoil any of the twists for Terminator 2 then, because it's
Thank
actually
you.
a good
I won't
film.
watch any trailers now that you said that. I won't watch any trailers.
Yeah, stay away. But I mean, like if you don't mind, I will spoil one of the later ones because they all start to contradict each other and they all get pretty awful.
Probably, if I'm honest, I'd probably only watch the first couple.
That's wise. I remember like Terminator Salvation which is the one that's probably more famous now for Christian Bale losing his rag on set than anything else.
Yep.
But which was just probably like the best bit of marketing that movie had.
Yeah, because people were you're gonna want to see that, and just in case it somehow made its way into the movie.
Yeah, exactly. I know, I got everyone talking about it.
Yeah.
But that movie, like, it had like Sam Worthington, sort of like the main character of that movie. He's like introduced in that film, and there's a big twist that he's actually a Terminator, but he doesn't even know it. Like, he's literally been built to think that he's human, unlike Terminators typically are very aware that they're machines. So yeah, it's like it comes like, I think maybe halfway through the film, maybe even a bit after, and like the movie like builds up to it really, really carefully. It, like, does like a total like sleight of hand thing to try and stop you from like seeing it, from stopping you from being aware of it. Obviously, comes as like a huge shock to the character, and you are obviously supposed to be like, the character is obviously supposed to be like the sort of viewpoint for the audience. Except all the trailers like from the start just like completely ran with the fact that he was a machine. And it's
what's really funny? I've actually seen the trailer, and I remember the bit that you're talking about.
It's so
because he's
weird.
standing and he's done like a kind of vice thing or something, and then
Exactly.
Christian Bale says something like, "Oh, you think you're human, don't you?" And I'm like,
it's so weird. It's so strange. And I remember like seeing the trailers like as a sort of like, I think I was like early teens, and just assuming that like, okay, well, like that's obviously early on. The movie obviously like needs you to know that, like, they wouldn't. But it's when you see the film, you're just like, yeah, you have a really hard time kind of like getting on board with the film, because you're just like, why is the movie hiding this really obvious reveal? But it wouldn't be an obvious reveal.
We've already seen in the 2-minute trailer.
so heavily trailed. And I think the next one was Terminator Genesis, the one with like Emilia Clarke. Also has like a big twist where like a main character, like, surprise surprise, turns out to be like a new type of Terminator. But again, like it's just shown in the trailers, and I remember the trailer dropping, and all the reaction was pretty much just people going, that seems like a pretty big moment in the movie. That seems like it's meant to be a surprise. And again, it was like really late on in the film, and again, it completely just like, those movies aren't regarded as very good. And I think, even if those surprises were surprises, they're still probably not like masterpieces of cinema. But it is just really weird that the films shoot themselves in the foot that way, and kind of have done since like the start. It's just such a weird approach to marketing. And you would think that weird. Like, you'd think at some point they would learn, but the fact that they just keep doing it with every film is so
the fact
weird.
that they did it more than once is so funny. Like,
it's like an actual tradition now.
Yeah, like surely the director of the film the first time it happened saw the trailer and was like, "What have you guys done?"
Yeah. Oh my god. I know, because
like
sometimes
I was trying so hard to conceal that.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are cases of like of the marketing team kind of just, I mean, the marketing team is generally like a separate sort of entity from like the filmmakers and stuff. And there are cases of I think Jurassic World is an example. I remember reading the director coming out and talking about the fact that he was really unhappy with all the stuff that they showed in the trailers, because he was like, there were some surprises in there that I would have loved people to have seen, but they just kind of took it and like put it in the trailers, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I do appreciate that.
There's not a whole bit like is there not about when someone gets like picked up and then dropped and she gets swallowed by like a big
there is
dinosaur thing? I'm sure I remember seeing that in the trailer, and I do remember people being annoyed.
Yeah,
like the filmmakers being like, "What? Why have you done that?"
I know. Yeah, like that. Thanks for literally just shooting the movie in the foot.
Because that was like that was the one bit of the movie that was a nice. Obviously, you've seen Jurassic Park, so you know that it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
But that was like one little small bit where you were like, "Oh God."
Yeah, it's a surprisingly like visceral moment. But yeah, no, it is a bit strange when that kind of happens. And it must be kind of like disheartening as well if you have like poured so much time and effort and like love into making something, and then your trailer comes out and you're just kind of like, hold on, what was that about?
Yeah. It must be weird as well, because especially if you've made the movie, you know all the ins and outs of it. So there would maybe be that moment where you'd watch it and you'd be like, did I just watch that? Or am I just thinking of the movie?
Yeah. Have I watched like so many different cuts and like it's just so in my head that I now can't even like tell. But yeah. So some movies are marketed a little bit better than others. And that kind of leads us on to, I guess, the next one, which is better than it has any right to be. Again, quite similar to like the first like podcast we did, where maybe films that aren't aren't so good. I guess you kind of say this like Blair Witch, but I think Blair Witch again at the time was like a bit of a revelation in and of itself, and like
Yeah.
was sort of innovating. But yeah, films that sort of have ran like killer marketing campaigns or have had some sort of like interesting marketing that yeah maybe like didn't quite deserve to. So again, if you're cool, I'll hear your thoughts first.
Yeah. So basically, when I was thinking about this, the one movie that popped into my head randomly is that movie that came out recently. It's called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yep, I know the film.
Yep. So I really wanted to see it, and I properly, me and my pal went to see it, and I properly forced her into it. And the way that I sold it to her, because the way it was sold to me, was that Guillermo del Toro was such a huge part of it.
Oh, really?
And I'm a big fan of,
Oh.
like I like Pan's Labyrinth, I really like Shape of Water, I'm a big fan of, he did this other movie called Kronos as well.
I've not seen that, but I've seen Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water, and I love them both.
Yeah. So he was all over the marketing campaign. It was his name first, and then the kind of director, but like his name was always top billed, it was bigger font, it was all about him, basically. And I thought, oh, that's Del Toro, and then it's a movie about like scary monsters, so he's done it before and he does it very well, so
Yeah.
that movie will be great. And then we went to see it. I think luckily I had like a Cineworld card or something, so I didn't have to pay for it, thank God. But the movie was not very good.
Yeah. I had a similar sort of reaction. I don't think I remember seeing. I don't think I saw any trailers. I think I literally just had a friend that was like, I fancy going to see something a bit creepy. So we're like, well, we'll go see that. It's called Scary Stories. Like Scary Stories is literally in the title. So like that's got to be like worth a watch. But yeah, it was like even then I was like quite bitterly disappointed by it. Never mind thinking Del Toro was actually like behind it.
I had bigged it up so much. I was sitting in the cinema. I was so embarrassed because it was like I've bigged this up so much because I thought it was all like it was Del Toro that's in it, but turns out it wasn't, and it just wasn't.
A very
I think
awkward
it was
position to be in.
yeah, it was yeah. And Jeremy, I kept looking over and I was like, oh God, sorry. Like, I'm sorry about this.
What have I done?
I thought it was going to be better, I promise.
Yeah, no, it's like one thing
I
for
thought
when a
it was-
movie disappoints you, but when you also have other people who are like writing off of your recommendation and you can tell they're not enjoying it, you're just like, oh no.
Exactly. I think because again, I was looking into it and the posters and stuff, they were also pretty creepy. Like there was you remember the weird kind of like white woman, and she's like all
In the hospital.
really weird looking. Yeah. So she was really creepy looking. So there was posters for her, and it was like all the red light, which was creepy. And the girl with the big kind of like spot on her face, you could kind of see something coming out it. So the posters were creepy, but the movie I just felt was there was only like tiny little snippets where it was like all right, but the rest was just long boring snippets of nothing.
Yeah, I very much agree, and it felt like even felt like the scares were constantly kind of missing their mark. Where it was like, I get where the movie's going, I get what the movie's going for and what it's kind of trying to do, but it's just not really landing like any of the scares. And yeah, it didn't really do a very good job of like making the stuff around that particularly interesting from what I remember. Because it's not, is it not? Am I right in thinking that it's set in the past? It's set in like the 50s or something.
Yeah, so it kind of gave me like when I watched the trailer again, it was kind of giving me like It vibes.
Yeah.
Which is obviously it's set in the past. It's a group of kids, so that they are kind of similar in that sense. But even though it's not my favorite movie, but I think it was a bit more successful in the kind of set in the kind of tone. Where I felt a bit more uneasy watching it than I did watching Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
I think as well. Go back to the Del Toro thing. Because he's so good at, like, he kind of makes scary things also, like, kind of magical.
Yep.
So, like, in Pan's Labyrinth, like, even the Pale Man, he's really creepy and scary, but there's something really, like, fantasy element and really magical about it. But this movie just didn't. It was very, like, what you see was what you got kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, you don't really feel like there's, like, a wider sort of world there, and, it was very sort of bland and very forgettable. Again, another film that like probably would have forgotten that I'd even seen it until you mentioned it there, and it came out like less than 2 years ago as well.
Yeah, it's just rage that keeps it in my head.
I can understand why,
I
to be
can't believe they
fair.
tricked me like that.
Putting your faith in. Yeah,
Exactly.
funnily enough, like my sort of example is horror based as well. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, again, like another franchise. I just vividly remember the marketing for Prometheus, um, being like they genuinely they did like I honestly think like it's one of the best like marketing campaigns I've ever seen where they had like I remember watching the trailer like basically on a loop. I remember having friends as well and them saying that they were always watching the trailer and they would like remember one of my friends being like, yeah, he walked into his brother's room and he just had the trailer in a loop. Like they did such a good job of like I think they used the same sort of apparently they used the same trailer for like the alien the original alien and like used that as like a template to kind of like because it's like a very specific sound effect that sort of like fires off
Yeah.
as you're seeing all these like really sort of striking visuals and that is one thing the movie has going for it is like do I think Prometheus is one of the best shot movies ever made because like it looks beautiful in so many places.
Yeah.
But yeah, the actual film itself was fairly naff, which was really disappointing. But they did some really interesting things with it as well. Where
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if
think embarrassingly enough, I enjoyed it more. I've got again such a soft spot for Charlize Theron that's in it. I just think she's
fair,
amazing.
fair.
So I'm biased in that sense where I'm going to watch it and I'm going to be like, do you know what? That movie was great. Just because
Well,
she was in it.
I genuinely like it was really weird because the first time I saw it, I was like that movie was brilliant, and it's something that's only really happened with that. I think that at least that's the most like striking example for me. But I remember reading not that long ago about people reacting to the Phantom Menace when that first came out, and apparently that had the same sort of thing where people were so hyped for the movie that they didn't even after seeing it they didn't even really realize that they hadn't enjoyed it that much. Like it was almost like they tricked themselves into enjoying the film because they were so ready to love it that they were just like it was great, like it was absolutely brilliant, and it took a while for it to like set in, and then it took like rewatches and stuff for people to go, hang on, this movie's maybe not that great. And it was kind of the same with me and Prometheus, where I first saw it and I was like, that movie is absolutely fantastic. And then
Yeah.
I remember going to see, I think I saw it like 3 times in cinemas, and
Oh
every
yeah.
single every single time I saw it, I was like, oh no, I'm liking this a lot less.
That's so funny because I think I've only seen it once, maybe twice, absolute max. So that would explain why I like it more than you do.
It dupes you, it gets you.
Yeah.
And I think like yeah, like I mean, what this is one of the things that the marketing sort of played up, but one of the movie's biggest strengths as well it has a really really good cast, a really sort of
Yeah.
varied cast. But Michael Fassbender absolutely crushes it, obviously as David. And I remember there was one of the weird things they did is for like part of the marketing was I don't know if you ever saw it, but they released like sort of viral videos. So they released like a TED talk that was set in the year like 20 I think it maybe in like 2023
yeah?
with Guy Pearce is like Wayland Yutani, and he's basically giving like a big sort of speech, and I'm pretty sure he mentions like the legend of Prometheus, and that was just a really cool way of like
That is
you know
cool.
he's quite like a sort of minor character. In fact, he appears just in prosthetics in the film, but it was a really cool way of like building the world of the movie without like showing any footage. And they did another one which was like a trailer for the David Android like sort of manufacturing line, like as if you were
Oh,
like
that's cool.
as if you were able to like purchase a David Android, and that was again like a really it was like a it's funny because it's like framed as like a really pleasant advert, but just because of like Michael Fassbender's performance, it's such like an unsettlingly creepy thing to watch. Like it's
Yeah.
a really like compelling thing like in and of itself. And I just remember being like watching that and being like I like cannot wait to see what he does in the film. And again like his performance is absolutely brilliant in the film. But yeah,
I think
like,
I do remember seeing the trailer, and I remember at the time, like you were talking about, it's got those kind of alien vibes, and I love the movie Alien. I know we've already said I'm a big fan of Ridley Scott, so I was like, "Ooh, that does look amazing." I distinctly remember the trailer being really good.
yeah, I think it's a shame as well because Prometheus is pretty much, in my opinion, Ridley Scott's only like sci-fi misfire, because I think the only other sci-fi films he's done are Alien, Blade Runner, and The Martian, which are all obviously like
Oh yeah,
films that are like held in ridiculously high regard. So Prometheus is like the one where he really did just drop the ball, and it's the one which had like the biggest and the best sort of hype around it. But oh well, I'll get over it one day.
yeah. Do you think does Ridley Scott who did the newest Blade Runner? It wasn't Ridley Scott, was it?
It was Denis Villeneuve as well, the guy that did Rival.
Do you think he's maybe just not into doing like sequels of that, and he's like he does one project and he's like, that's me finished with that. I'm just gonna move on to something else.
Ridley Scott, quite possibly.
Yeah.
I know that one thing that I know that he was supposed to get like a sequel was his Robin Hood movie that came out in like 2010. I think that was supposed to be
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be the first part of a trilogy. But I mean, that was also at a time when like Hollywood was only interested in making trilogies because of like Lord of the Rings. So I think that was his sort of stab at joining in like a sort of not quite fantasy but a sort of medieval trilogy. And obviously it didn't pan out. But yeah, I think he's better off probably not doing sequels. We don't really need like a sequel to Thelma and Louise, and the sequel to Blade Runner was obviously...
What would the sequel to Thelma and Louise be like? Like, what would it be? Would it just call her husband, like Thelma's horrible husband?
I don't know, but like someone's going to pitch it one day.
Yeah, that's true.
It's only a matter of time. I mean, there was also... Have you heard about the pitched sequel to Gladiator?
No.
No.
How would what?
It was
going to
going...
be the wee boy?
No, it was going to be Russell Crowe in the afterlife, and he like apparently like fights like every war in human history, and he's going through. I think it was written by Nick Cave, like the musician. Like it was. I think it came like weirdly close to being made, but it was. I think it was ultimately like way too expensive and kind of like buckled because of it. But yeah. Ridley Scott and sequels don't really go like hand in hand. So
maybe just leave that to someone else.
Exactly. Anyway, moving on from that, the next category is the most shocking trailers, or the most shocking marketing campaigns that we've seen. So again, I'll hear your thoughts first.
Yeah. So basically, I've got kind of like what you were talking about with I've already forgotten their names. Transformer movies.
Yes.
And my choice was Avatar.
Okay.
Because if you watch the trailer for that, it's 3.5 minutes long, and then there's no need to watch the film. Like, it literally outlines almost every single plot point.
The movie itself.
I was watching the trailer again. What are you saying? Sorry.
I was going to say the movie itself isn't exactly like a narrative sort of miracle. Like, there's not tons going on in that film.
That's like, I can think of one kind of big plot point that wasn't in the trailer, and that's it. No joke. The trailer details from start to finish. It shows you the whole of Pandora, which I think would have been nice to experience with the character in the movie.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
It shows you the fact that they go to war with the Na'vi or whatever. It shows you that they go to war with them. It shows you that the main character becomes one of them and that he's fighting with them. It shows. It outlines.
Wild.
It outlines obviously the bad guy, the big army guy. It's not difficult to tell that he's the bad guy when you're watching the movie, but it's very in the movie like, here's your bad guy. He's the bad one. Don't root for him. And then it shows you like all the different members of the crew who fight with the Na'vi against them. It's really
so it really
weird.
does tip its hand on absolutely everything then.
Yeah. Do you know that way it gives... And like you were saying, the narrative is nothing extraordinary. So if you've seen any movie before, you just need to watch the trailer and you know what's going to happen. You know that it's not going to be the bad guys that win. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You know what it's all
So
going.
it was just so weird. Especially because I don't think I had seen the trailer before I'd seen the movie. And I do enjoy the movie, but the trailer was very much like, I think it was a bit more like, oh, let's show all this cool CGI. As opposed to let's try and entice people to see the movie.
Yeah. Well, I guess we know now to be wary of. So it must just be a James Cameron thing then, because he did Terminator 2.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually when I was bringing Avatar up. I was like, oh yeah, James.
That's really. Have you ever looked up any trailer for Titanic? Because I've not. Like.
Yeah, man. Titanic's like my favourite movie ever.
They,
I'm not even gonna lie.
What did they show the end of that in the trailers as well?
I actually don't think they do. I don't remember seeing the ship crash. Does it crash? I can't remember.
That's quite funny.
I remember
because
the trailers when it was re-released because
oh
I'm such
yeah,
a big fan. Everyone I knew would text me and be like, "The trailer's on,"
yeah, it came
and
out
I
in,
was
was
like
it
sprint down the stairs.
2012 on like the 100th anniversary of the actual ship sinking, wasn't it?
Yeah, I went to see it like 4 times in the cinema when it came out.
I was really bitter because I'd held off. I'd never seen Titanic for years, and I kept saying I was like I'm gonna wait until like the 100th anniversary of the ship sinking and I'll watch Titanic then. And then like something like 6 months before it, my girlfriend at the time sat me down. She was like, "We're watching Titanic. Like we are watching Titanic," and we watched it on DVD. And then because of that, when the movie was re-released in cinemas, I was then like, I feel like I've just watched the movie and it's such a long movie that I didn't have any drive to see it. But I was so annoyed because I was like, it's just been re-released in cinemas and it's
You
in
could
3D.
have seen it in cinema, yeah.
It would have been such a great first experience, and instead I watched it like
been.
in a bedroom on a DVD. So yeah, I'm kind of
on
salty.
like a laptop screen that's like this
Yeah,
big.
exactly. It just wasn't the experience. I held out for so long, and then missed it by an inch.
That's hilarious. No, I thought honestly the trailer for Avatar, really reminded me. It was very much like it was a bit Michael Bay-esque, where it was just like, oh, look, all these explosions and guns and cool like robot things. And
I do remember there being a lot of talk with the movie coming out about there being like photorealistic CGI and it completely like changing the game in terms of like CGI visuals and effects and stuff like that. So yeah, like I guess that was really the angle that they played. Although to be fair, given that it's I think it's now the highest grossing movie of all time again because they re-released it, which is kind of insane for like an original movie.
Which is funny because Titanic was the highest grossing movie before that.
That's right, yeah. Literally the top two films were James Cameron, and both of them original movies, and his last two movies
no wonder
as well.
He's got such an ego.
Well, I think the thing is, he's kind of. I think his success has actually scared him off. I saw an interview from when Titanic came out, and he talked about the fact that he was more sort of driven when he was less successful, and that actually Titanic. Obviously, he was just talking after Titanic had come out, and I think at this point had like broken sort of records and stuff, and he was saying that he was now kind of scared for what he was going to do next because like all of a sudden there's much like the expectation has never been higher, and to be fair, like he might not have delivered in terms of like I don't think anyone would really say Avatar is his best film, but like in terms of like what producers will care about, he certainly delivered. But I guess that's also why he's maybe taken so long making Avatar sequels because he's scared himself off a second time.
Yeah, exactly.
He's his own worst enemy. Once again, I've gone a very different direction with my pick, and I've gone for the Jordan Peele horror movie Us.
Okay.
Because we've talked a lot about like movies sort of spoiling themselves in the trailer, and that was a movie I would have seen Us. I was going to see Us without ever watching like a single frame of footage for that movie because I loved Get Out so much, and I was just like, whatever he does next, like I'm gonna be there for it. Like, you know, worst thing that's gonna happen is I'm gonna be disappointed, but I doubt that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the trailer for Us, and obviously I knew absolutely nothing about it, and it watching it and just sort of being like, obviously the premise of it I thought was so cool, the idea of like there being like another sort of like a duplicate family, but I got really worried while watching the trailer because I was like, I feel like that's going to be a really big reveal in the movie, and it's going to come like quite far on, that like the sort of like, because I think they make it seem as if like in the trailer they make it seem as if like at first you don't know, like things are going on, they don't know why it's happening, and I was like, I was so annoyed when I saw the trailer because I was like, that feels like it's just completely ruined the movie, and there was like going to be a big reveal. But when I watched the movie, I was actually quite surprised at how sort of early on they get into that, and I think the way that it's handled, I think again the movie kind of like tips his hand on that one quite early on. So I was sort of pleasantly surprised with like that being a trailer where I was so convinced. I was like, that movie's definitely like, I went in genuinely thinking like I'm not going to enjoy this as much as I should, and then being more surprised that the movie went in like places that I never expected it to, and that being really cool.
That's such a good point, because I remember I went to see it in the cinema, I'm sure, and I remember knowing that it was about like doppelgangers and stuff like that, so I must have seen the trailer. I think I probably, because I'm a big fan of Get Out, so I've probably actively seeked out the trailer And then that was my pitch to my boyfriend to make him go and see it. I was like, oh, this is what it's about. I was like, we were going regardless. I was just giving him a wee pitch before we went.
That is very fair. It's a good pitch. Like, again, it's one of those movies that, like, conceptually, seeing the trailer for the first time, I was like, why have I not thought of that? Why is he the first person to do that? It's so good, and he does do such a good job with the movie, and like Lupita Nyong'o is like terrifying, and the fact that she is like the protagonist and the antagonist at the same time, is just like so genius. And it's quite cool. Like, horror, I think more and more has become like such a vehicle for great actors and great performances. I think this like last decade in particular, like there's been like some stellar performances that have come out of horror films, and Us very much feels just like like one of the best examples of that, of them going like, look, okay, we're using like horror to kind of justify like these like incredible performances, and really like the whole movie is sort of like carried on these like actors' backs, and it's a shame because they never really get that much recognition for it.
I think they're not like Anthony Hopkins is like the only person to win an Oscar for like a horror role.
Really?
For Silence of the Lambs.
And I wouldn't even really say Silence of the Lambs is horror as well.
Yeah, it's like it's more kind of like thrillery than horror.
Yeah,
I love that that's as horror-y as the Oscars is gonna get. Like, I don't like scary things.
It's as close to exactly as close as they'll get, which is a shame because it's a really, really, like, I suppose it's a good thing. It's generally always like a cheap sort of genre to produce, and quite a successful genre. Yeah. But it is a shame that like there's just not real recognition for the work that kind of goes into it. Because there's like some serious like talent that's gone in there, and I forever love the fact that Jordan Peele as well swung from like doing Pea and Keel like comedy skits to just doing horror, and him completely like rather than just like falling into the niche he carved himself, he just carved out a completely new one.
Yeah, because it's not even like he does like generic jump scare horror movies. They're like proper like intriguing stories, and they like we were saying about like alien movies where they kind of like reflect different parts of society and stuff like that. Like, it's not just like a cheap horror movie that he's gone to. Yeah,
exactly. Like, thematically he hits some notes, and you can tell that the guy puts a lot of work into the things that he's producing with a lot of care. But yeah, like he's been very successful so far, and hopefully that continues. Cool. So moving on to the second last category. I thought it'd be cool to talk about like some of the weirdest examples of marketing that we've seen. So once again, I'll hand over to you and let you talk.
Lovely, thank you. So I've got 2 picks for this one. The first one was the Sweeney Todd movie with the Tim Burton one with Johnny Depp. Basically because I watched the trailer recently, haven't seen the movie, and the trailer doesn't really allude to the fact that the film is a musical. Really? Yeah, like there's one little section when Johnny Depp has like a wee kind of sing song, but if you know Tim Burton movies, you could just put it down to Tim Burton's a bit weird, so the movie's gonna be a bit weird. But honestly, like, do you know the way I was watching it? I've obviously seen the movie, so I know it's a musical, and it's very much like from the very beginning, it's a musical. They're singing and dancing. Well, not dancing, but they're singing, and that continues for the entire movie. But the trailer was very much like, oh, one man's struggle as his life is taken away from him and he gets revenge. Whereas, do you know what? It's like a musical about a barber who kills people and then his bird makes them into pies.
Again, like thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that I remember seeing trailers for Sweeney Todd, and I think I remember actually like having conversations with friends and them having seen it. And at that point, again, I think was it 2009 Sweeney Todd came out?
Couldn't tell you. I can't remember.
I was at whatever point it was. I was definitely like in a super like angsty teen phase, and I remember like musicals at that point were like poison to me, and I remember like friends discussing it, and I can't remember if I had any awareness of it being a musical, if they mentioned it, or if I had maybe suspected but wasn't sure, because I think you said there's like one bit in the trailer where you see someone singing.
Yeah, there's one bit when Johnny Depp has like a little bit of a sing song.
I think
Yeah, he's like threatening people as he does it.
I think I might have asked him. I think I might have been like, "Is Sweeney Todd a musical?" And then being like, "Yeah," like massively.
That's funny because I remember at the time people watching it and then being like, "I didn't realize it was a musical."
Oh, that's just so absurd to.
Like, why would you hide that fact? Because 5 minutes in, you're going to realize this is a musical.
Yeah, exactly, and like you're completely destroying all word of mouth, and like you're just like you might sell tickets from people who are keen to see it based on the trailer, but you're running the risk of them hating it or walking out. Like, why not just be honest about the fact that it's a musical?
It was so weird as well. I think as well, if you didn't know it was a musical and you went to see it, it would be so jarring when they started singing.
Yeah.
Like, jarring to the point where you'd be looking around being like, what is going on?
Especially because, like, it's, like, subject matter-wise, it's quite dark and bleak. So if you went in expecting, like, okay, it's going to be a really dark and gritty film, and then you have some... like, what?
I think it's funny because the cast as well, like, they can get through it, but none of them are particularly amazing singers. So... like it's not like you're watching a movie and there's like Hugh Jackman's in it and Anne Hathaway, so you're like, oh, do you know what I mean? If they start singing, you'll be like, all right. Whereas if it's Johnny Depp, it's just not the last thing you would expect, especially I think from a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
It's maybe not animated, I suppose, like a live action one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's very, very strange for them to just
so weird.
be so ashamed of the fact that they've made a musical, as if like
that's what it felt like.
As if they didn't realise it, or as if they decided last minute that they were turning Sweeney Todd into a musical, and all the marketing people were like, "Well, we've already got these trailers ready, so
exactly.
We're not going to budge." Yeah, you can re-edit the film. To be honest,
very good.
Yeah, very bizarre. Very good pick. Again, like it was a memory that I didn't even know I had. So it was nice to have that sort of reawaken. I've gone for again a very different pick, where another one that I remember from my childhood, where it was the trailer for the first Scooby-Doo movie. You know, the live action one.
Yeah, great movie.
It's a terrific movie. Like, I love it. But they ran one of the weirdest trailers I've ever seen, where they literally they made it look like it was a Batman movie, and it was like this big sort of creepy gothic house, and it's like sort of panning through with like, I'm pretty sure like a voiceover, and it goes to like this silhouette who looks like Batman, and it turns out that it's Scooby-Doo.
It's Scooby-Doo.
And that's just the trailer. It's just the reveal that it's not Batman, it's Scooby-Doo.
Do you know what? I actually think I remember that. Because I've got such a love for that movie. I think both of them are so good.
It's such a good film. I completely love them both as well. I think they're so underrated.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like it's just I had like a VHS tape. I don't even know what film it was, but I just remember that trailer was always on it, and I think there was like a good few times where I watched that trailer having forgotten that it was a Scooby-Doo trailer. So they managed to trick me like multiple times.
That's amazing. Do you know what's really funny actually? Because every time I watch, I think it's the second Scooby-Doo movie, every time I watch it, I can never remember who the villain is. And it surprises me every single time I watch it.
Really? That's absolutely brilliant.
So every time I'm watching it, it's definitely him. And then I think to myself, no, you know that it's not him. But I can't for the life of me remember who it is. Even now, thinking about it, I can't remember who it is.
I'm not going to spoil for you then, because it's a nice reveal if you don't know it's there. Yeah, I love them both. And I think I remember watching the first one actually like a couple of years ago, and it was the first time I'd seen it since I was like a kid, and I was like really sort of surprised at how meta it is. Which was like really sort of like warped my brain when I was rewatching it, because I was like, that's genuinely like fair play to the movie for taking that approach, because it must have taken like some guts to kind of like do live action Scooby-Doo, but it's like we're going to be really tongue-in-cheek about it, and it like really kind of like takes the mickey out of like Scooby-Doo itself, which is like such a beloved property and is the reason that the movie is being made. So
that's so true. Yeah, because like Fred, he's very like caricaturish in that, isn't he? Like they all are. It's so good.
Another weird thing about it is apparently, because it was James Gunn that did it.
Oh yeah.
Of all people. Apparently, I again found this out very recently, and I found this out because he was interviewed recently, and talked about it. I think this might have been what led to me rewatching it, and talked about it and said that apparently the movie wasn't meant to be a kids' film. They literally had shot it. I think they wrote it and shot it as an adult movie, and at the last minute, I think the sort of studio freaked out and they were like, no, it has to be for kids, it has to be for kids, so they had to rework it and re-edit it. But apparently it was literally like an adult movie, and they had to, I think they might have like even like, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar was wearing like a bit of like an exposing dress, and they even like CGI'd like part of the dressing to cover her up. Which is just
That's
like
so funny.
such a weird like change of gears in the last second, but it's even weirder that they were ever going to do that with like a live action Scooby-Doo movie.
Yeah. I would pay good money for them to release that original cut.
Me too. Like,
Just out of sheer curiosity.
Never mind the Snyder cut. Like that's the cut we need to see, because that's
Yeah.
a radically different film.
That's what the people want. That's
Exactly.
truly
It's what the people
That's
need.
so funny. That's funny. I think that's such a good choice. The other one I thought was really funny, or really weird, sorry, was the trailer for the movie Drive.
Yeah.
Because have you seen the movie?
I've seen the movie. I don't think I've seen any of the trailers.
The movie is so like slow and like methodically paced, and it's, even though it's about like a getaway driver, there's not a huge amount of action in it. There's the kind of last third of the movie maybe has got like the conflict and like the drama and the violence and stuff. And when it's violent, it is excessively violent. But if you watch the trailer, it honestly makes it look like a more violent kind of like Fast and Furious type movie, where they make it look so that it's got all these super quick cuts, and they just make it look like it's the most dramatic quick movie ever. Like, if you had seen that trailer, thought, oh, I like movies like that, and went to see Drive, you would be bored out your nut. Because it's not
be having a good time.
Yeah, it's not like those movies at all. I just thought it was so weird. It's like that Sweeney Todd thing again, where I'm like, why are you trying to trick people into seeing the movie?
Yeah.
People that maybe aren't necessarily going to like it.
Especially when it's like, it's a good film.
Yeah.
What a weird approach to just be like, yeah, we've got this great film that like there's definitely going to be a love for. Yeah, let's just completely mishandle the marketing for this one.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That people
let's
are
make
like,
it look like Fast and Furious. Like,
guarantee people will be annoyed about it. Not the word of mouth you really want.
Yeah, weird choice.
But yeah, no, I like very good picks, to be fair. Very weird angles to take. Cool. So let's move on to the last section then, which is potentially quite short depending on what you've come up with. I only really have like a couple of suggestions that aren't that exciting. But the last one is basically missed opportunities that we felt could have existed and sort of haven't been taken. And this is really just an excuse for me to kind of talk about mine, because it's bothered me for like so many years. And since we're talking about marketing, I just wanted to bring it up quickly. But I'll let you go first.
I love it. So this one was quite difficult, because it's always like when you're watching things, obviously this isn't the case with you, but if you're watching things, you tend to think of it at the time and then forget it.
Yeah.
But the example I chose was the movie Bridesmaids.
Okay.
Because I think that movie is so funny. I think it's so hilarious. But the trailer makes it look like this horrible kind of like Judd Apatow kind of comedy, where it's just like people farting and burping and like, where it's not like that at all. I think it's so funny, and it's so like, it kind of, the trailer like that kind of cheapens it a bit, because it's more about like Annie and her relationship to her bestie and how that's falling apart, but within the structure of it being absolutely hilarious.
Yep. I that's really funny that you say that, because again, like, I remember seeing Bridesmaids. I think I saw it in cinema when it came out in 2011. But I was away in Poland when it was released. I was on holiday with my mum, and came back, and my girlfriend at the time again, she'd went to see it with her friend Jack. And I remember her saying to me, she was like, you need to see this film. Like, it's so good. It's so funny. Yeah. But I remember like my reaction immediately being like, what? Like, because I had seen trailers about it. I had seen trailers for it. I was aware of it. And I was just like, surely not. Like, surely we're not thinking of the same film. So that's such a good point, because, yeah, the marketing for that was so poor. And it's such, again, it's such a good film and such a funny film that it's like, how do you take that and how do you take that and make people like put people off wanting to see
Yeah,
it?
because normally the trailers historically put the funniest part of a comedy movie in the trailer, so that you watch the movie and you're like, funniest parts were in the trailer. That's
Yep.
the opposite with Bridesmaids. I think as well the thing
Exactly.
that really annoys me about that movie is that they really push the Vegas part of it, so that people like refer to it as the female hangover, but they don't even get to Vegas.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, did they go
you
to
know what I mean?
Vegas in that film?
Yeah, they do. They don't even go. It's nothing like. I would argue that it's far funnier than The Hangover.
Yeah, yeah, it's a completely
think
different film.
Yeah, they completely like. The trailer was so weird. I feel like it's so full of like hilarious women like Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, Rose
Yeah.
Byrne. They're all like hilarious. I think the trailer should have stressed them.
Exactly, because their
more than,
dynamic
like-
is what like carries the film.
Yeah,
and their
I think
characters are
one of
also
the-
good.
One of the funniest parts of the film is like the like quiet awkwardness of
Yeah.
different things. So like Kristen Wiig's character, especially when she's just so awkward and it's like crippling to watch, but it's so funny.
Is there not a scene was early on where it's her and Rose Byrne's character and they're trying to give a speech to Maya Rudolph,
Oh,
like
don't.
the bride, and they both just keep taking the mic off each other, don't they, to give like an
And they're both
amendment
so
to their
they're
speech.
so polite to each other. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, thanks, I'll just take. Oh, thank you. Oh, that was lovely. Thanks. Oh, it's so funny.
It's so painful to watch, but it's so hilarious at the same time. Yeah.
I think it's funny as well because the trailer I watched, Chris O'Dowd wasn't even in the trailer, and he's a big part of the movie.
And again,
And
he's
the
also
poor-
like a really good like comedic actor.
Yeah, he's very funny, and the poor guy wasn't even in the trailer. John Hamm was in the trailer more, and he's in the movie for maybe like 5 minutes screen
I
time.
I actually do remember that from the trailer, yeah, and I remember being like really because it opens with John Hamm's like character.
Yeah,
They're in
and he's
bed,
funny.
and yeah, but he's not. He's definitely. I'd say he's like one of the weaker parts of the film, and he's only in like that bit, and then he comes back at like one other scene
Slightly
or something.
later on, yeah.
Yeah, so he's like such a minute part of that film. But yeah, again, like what I suppose it's not a missed opportunity because it's probably better to discover the film and to be blown away by it. But
True.
at the same time, like yeah, like what a weird like. Again, what a weird
Yeah.
way to just look at a great film, a really funny film, and be like, ah, yes, I know what will get people to see this. The worst bits
Yeah.
of the film.
I think as well, the way that they were marketing it like it was movies like Knocked Up or 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I would argue are more kind of skewed towards men.
Yep,
So why would you try and get
the wrong
primarily
demographic.
men to watch a movie about like a group of 5 women going to a wedding kind of thing?
Yeah,
It just seems like they were targeting the wrong audience.
yeah, exactly. And I suppose that's Hollywood's like fear of, especially at that point of like females being able to carry a movie, which is insane and is like why like there's like next to no female-led superhero movies, despite like when Wonder Woman came out being ridiculously successful because like obviously there's a market for that.
Yeah.
Most
Like
of the
there
people
are women in the world,
yeah,
yes.
most of the people on the planet are female, so
Yeah.
they're probably gonna go see a movie with like women
Yeah.
in it. Yeah, and it's a shame
It's
because
so funny.
like yeah, but I guess that must be like the reason for like Bridesmaids kind of like putting the fear in them, but it's such a good comedy.
And yeah, because I think even after that, there's I think actually I was going to say there's more, but the only other really funny. Oh no, I suppose because comedy's more after that movie. There's more movies like Spy, where it's like female
Yeah.
leads. Sisters was another one that was really funny, female leads as well.
I think I've seen Sisters, and then there was obviously the female-led Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but I don't know how successful that was.
No.
I haven't seen it, so I can't
I've-
comment.
I've also not seen that. It got people talking, and it was
Yeah.
to be fair, it was bold of them. It was bold of them to do it.
Yeah, but well,
Yeah.
we'll reserve judgment on that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's for another podcast perhaps.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll jump onto mine then. Before I'm completely like enveloped by darkness because.
I know. I'm like, where are you? I'm looking at the window and it's not even that dark here.
I'm looking at the window and it's not that dark here, but for some reason, like on my laptop, it's just I don't know if you ever seen the TV show Red Dwarf. I'm starting to look like the hologram from that runs the ship because it's literally just like a
I'm
disembodied
starting
head.
to get para that there's gonna be like I'm starting to get para that there's gonna be like, you know that bit, what was that movie? The Conjuring or whatever, when someone comes up behind you
Yeah.
and just claps in your ear. So
It's for the Blair Witch. I'm doing it. That's the look I'm going for.
oh, I like it.
Bringing it full circle.
I like it.
But yeah. Sorry to get to the point.
Sorry, yeah.
My sort of missed opportunity. I mean, I've got two ones that sort of come to mind. The first one's kind of like a sort of minor one, and it's funny because it's actually going the opposite way from everything else that we've really talked about, which is with the sort of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. I really wish that. Obviously, that movie was like monumentally successful. I would like, again, it's another film that I feel like it didn't quite live up to the hype, and that was kind of a shame. But I really feel like it's a missed opportunity, and like Disney would never have done it. I don't think any studio would. But that was probably the best opportunity anyone's ever going to have for them to have an almost non-existent marketing campaign. Like, I really wish that they had just like not. They literally, because with Star Wars being such a big name, they could have not shown a single frame of footage and still done ridiculously well. And I think it would have been so cool to go into that movie.
People would have gone to see it, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would have been so cool to walk into the cinema to see that and to literally not know anything about it, to not know who was in it, to not know like what was going to happen, any plot details. It would have been a really cool way to like sort of discover that. So that was sort of the first one I like. The first example I had, but the other one that has kind of like stuck with me for years is, and I'll never stop being annoyed about this, even though it doesn't matter
so
in the
excited.
slightest. And it's the fact that they didn't release a James Bond film in the year 2007, because you get one chance every
007.
one chance every 1,000 years to take advantage of the fact that the year ends in 007, and they didn't do it, and it's like so baffling.
That's amazing.
I think Casino Royale came out at like the tail end of 2006 as well. It's like, surely of all the movies that have been made around release dates, why would they not see that coming a mile away and go, we have got a chance, like we have got an opportunity here. Like the trailer for that writes
That
itself.
is such a good point.
And yeah,
Yes.
like I was a kid when Casino Royale came out, and I'd never even seen a James Bond film. I had seen like trailers for them. I was aware of James Bond as a character, and I was aware of what those films were, but I'd never seen them. And even then, as a kid, I was like, why is this not happening? It was honestly,
That's such a good point.
it's been in my brain forever, and it will never not be in there. And I mean, I don't know what's
You were
going to
lying
happen.
on your deathbed like, God damn.
I really hope a producer sees this one day and they kick themselves for it. One of the Broccoli's or whatever their name is that are behind
Exactly.
the James Bond films.
Shamed.
Yeah. How could they
That's
miss
so
it?
funny. That's such a good point. Yeah, that's so funny, because I'm like, it was right there.
So obvious, and they came so close as well. I would be
And
like,
there's, yeah. Oh,
I'd be less annoyed. I'd be less annoyed if like there was like a Bond hiatus or something. But like, come on, guys, you had a new Bond, like, and a Bond.
oh
a
yeah,
Bond.
because that was his first
Yeah.
Bond movie, wasn't it? Oh,
Exactly, and there was a really like extreme reaction to him. Like people thought he was going to do a really bad job and stuff.
Because
so,
he
like,
was blonde. I remember the drama
Yeah.
because he was blonde and.
exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. So maybe that
That's
was
so
it. Maybe they were so freaked out by that. They were just like, we have to get the movie out. We have to get the movie out.
That's a good movie as well. I quite like Casino Royale, except the whole last like half hour, which I pretend doesn't even exist.
It's weird because like the movie kind of like tells its story, and then it's just like, and you're watching it and you're like, why is it still going?
Yeah, it's almost like oh well, we forgot to have another bad guy, so let's just create one.
It literally just like builds a new story in the last wee bit, and then
Yeah.
like I mean the very very last scene where he obviously says like because he says James Bond for the first time, doesn't he? Or James Bond for the
I think
first time.
that genuinely, I think I turn it off when it gets to that point, so I'm not sure.
The very very last scene itself is like a very cool last scene, but yeah, it's just again you could probably like you could definitely find a way like to just remove that whole like or rework it in some way, because it's it's such a weird like change of gears at such like a strange point in the film.
True. I can't believe you told me that about that 007. I'm never going to stop thinking about that now.
Good, I want this to spread. I need it to be in everyone's heads. It's
Like
gonna bother me
dissension amongst
forever.
everyone.
Yeah. I built a podcast just to talk about this.
Exactly. You waited, what, 5 episodes in before you could just say. I love it.
Yeah, I needed to establish ourselves before I could rant about this. Otherwise I would just come across as a nutter, which I kind of already am, given I am now completely sitting in the dark. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I've gone fully deranged. I'll never be allowed to host a podcast again. Anyway,
that was a good
on
choice.
that note,
that was very funny.
Thank you very much. I feel like this is a good place to wrap things up. I also feel like I don't have much choice because well, also before I just disappear and it just becomes you and my voice.
Let's just say goodbye while we can.
Yeah, exactly, before it's too late. But yes, thank you very much for joining me yet again.
No worries, thank you.
Obviously, as ever, the next week will be hosted by yourself. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. I'm looking forward to having the first podcast post my James Bond rant, to not having that as my system anymore. It'll be quite therapeutic. And I'm also looking forward to having lights on for the next podcast, so that this doesn't happen again. I put way too much faith in the sun. And
I know you remember. You need to remember that you're in Scotland, and it just comes and goes.
Yeah, even if it's a sunny day, it doesn't mean it's gonna stay sunny for the length of a podcast.
Exactly.
But yes, let's wrap things up here. Thank you to everyone who joined. As ever, there will be a description which will list all the sort of trailers and stuff talked about. I'll try and put links as well to any trailers talked about, because it's a fairly easy thing to do, and I imagine most of them are on YouTube. But it'd be fairly convenient if anyone wants to take a look at the sort of stuff we've talked about. It just means it's there. If not, then it gives me an excuse to kind of rewatch all the stuff anyway, which I love doing.
I'm dying to watch the Scooby-Doo one anyway. So
I need to find it out. I hope it's online. Worst comes to worst, I'll dig up the VHS and a VHS player and a TV that the VHS player can connect to.
Love it.
And then just record it on a mobile phone so it's terrible quality.
Yep, love it. Looking forward to it.
But anyway, thank you to all who joined us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Farewell.